Hello. What's up? I almost said good morning. That was weird. It is September 11th, 2020. I'm your host, David Dull. This is The Rational Life. A lot of stories to get to today. As always, the title doesn't give too much away. Actually, oftentimes, I usually make this title sort of generic, but today, because I don't think I'll be posting these videos separately, since it is September 11th, I'll be starting with a couple of September 11th stories and then going on to a lot more. But before I give you a little preview of what's to come, rationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Help support the show. Keep me going. YouTube, can't rely on YouTube all that much, especially now that they are reviewing my content for... anyways, I'm not sure if I could even get into it, so forget about it. But help support the show, as this is the only way independent media can really thrive. All right. Let me give you a little preview of what's to come today. So, as I said, as the headline points out, a couple of stories on 9/11, two different 9/11s. Also, I'll get into a very, lack of a better term here, interesting poll on Biden and Trump and how people are viewing these two candidates. Also, going to go over a couple of clips from the Green Party of Canada debate that happened last night. It was a debate that I'll get into more of my thoughts on it, but man, many parts were very embarrassing. But thankfully, there was one candidate who stood out the entire time, and I'll have those clips for you and why a good Green Party leader matters for the Canadian political discourse. Also, there are a couple of stories I didn't really prep, but I may get to later. Susan Sarandon shutting down Soledad O'Brien, very enjoyable. Obama lecturing everybody on the importance of climate change, despite his record on that. More on that later. I'll also take a look at a recent polling between Trump and Biden, where the race currently stands, how I'm feeling about it. We'll get there. Also going to compare a Trump and Biden ad, and also show you some more ads that Biden's putting out that actually kind of surprised me. But before I get there, got to start with the bigger news here. All right, actually, this isn't really big news, but I do want to discuss this. So most Americans only know of one 9/11. But in fact, there is another 9/11 that's gone basically completely ignored. It's, for the most part, I believe, not taught in schools. It's rarely ever referenced when discussing U.S. foreign policy and the approach that the U.S. government has had to the rest of the world over the past 50 years. But it's worth mentioning here. So first, there's also a video coming up of Bernie Sanders explaining it. But first up here, Jacobin tweeting out, on September 11th, 1973, Chile's socialist president Salvador Allende was overthrown in a CIA-backed military coup. In this 1971 interview, published in English for the first time, Allende expressed his fears of internal destabilization and U.S. interference. So if you want to find that discussion or find this article, go to jacobinmag.com. You'll find it. But I want to give you just the overview here. And the way Bernie Sanders explains it, I mean, there is no excuse for people not to know about this. It is not all that complicated. As you see here, Bernie explains it very well in 2 minutes. Americans should be aware of the impact that they've had worldwide and how this moment in time was a major piece of it. So here's Bernie talking to a class back in 2003, explaining this military coup.
But if you check American history, you know, sometimes the president will tell you, well, we're always defenders of freedom. We believe in freedom. But if you check history, what you will find is that in many years, especially in Latin America, which way back from when President Monroe developed his Monroe Doctrine, we have the right to own Latin America, and we will tell any government there what we want to happen. That's the simple truth. So throughout our history, we have overthrown many, many governments. We didn't like their form of government. In the case of Chile, in 1973, what you had is an election in which a guy named Salvador Allende won the election. Problem is, Nixon and his friends didn't like him. Why? Because Salvador Allende fought for the poor people and the working people of that country. He believed that the resources of Chile, their copper mines and so forth, should belong to the people. And he won a free election. No one denied that for a second. It was a tough election. He didn't win by much, but he won a free election. There was another election. His party got more support. He was overthrown by the CIA and corporate interest, because corporate interest preferred, of course, that the United States companies dominate that country. And a lot of what politics is about, going way, way back to the 19th century, through England, France, is the domination of colonies so that big companies in a given country can take the resources of those countries for their own use. So I think that's what happened, and it was a very unfortunate day in American history. Allende won in a democratic election, was popular, was overthrown, and eventually killed. And in his place, a guy named General Pinochet took place, ran that country with an iron fist, killed many, many people, but he was okay. He was a good guy. Why? Because he was a friend of corporate America.
Now, this is a quick 2-minute explanation, and it really gives you the entire overview that you need to understand U.S. foreign policy and why the world is what it is and how the U.S. has played a major part in that. So I just think it's crazy that people don't realize this stuff, that we are not all that connected to the history, to why things are the way they are, to the way that the U.S. has destabilized the entire world. And it's important to recognize the other 9/11. All right. Gonna get to the other 9/11 story, the other 9/11 story, and then we'll get to everything else. Forgot to mention as well, of course, I'll take super chats and whatever throughout. New member joined today, just now. Opso99, welcome. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. All right. And of course, if you are new to this stream, as I always want to remind you, I'm the only one doing this, so I got to prep these stories. There may be moments of silence. Just chat amongst yourselves, and it'll all be good. It's always great when I put the wrong link in my notes for a video that I want to use. All right, I found it. Ravi Parimi, thank you for the very generous donation, and for the green heart. Much appreciated. That is very generous of you. All right. Sorry, this took a little longer because I saved the wrong link, but we're good now. Today is the 19th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. 2,977 people died, and that's just on 9/11 alone. Obviously, if you include the U.S. reaction to those attacks and the wars that were started, tens of thousands more are included, of course, in that number. But I want to go a little into, I think it's important every year, as long as Trump's in power, to remind people of Trump's history with 9/11. Things he has said, things he has claimed. And let's start with PolitiFact here. Trump saying how, quote, "I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as the World Trade Center collapsed." Obviously, that never happened. So this claim was made in 2015. At the time, since there was that primary going on, I believe Ben Carson also came out and said he also saw that. And then eventually the campaign walked it back because they couldn't prove it. Didn't happen. But this was Trump's way of essentially stoking fear around Muslims. And, he went on to say how he was talking about Muslims in future interviews about this. And, of course, none of this ever happened. But what did happen, and obviously Trump isn't just to blame for this, but a larger cultural shift in how terrorism was discussed in the U.S., but of course Trump being a part of it, the hate crimes against Muslims. So hate crime incidents against Muslims spiked after 9/11. I mean, you see here, massive, of course, on 2001, but still huge increase from before. And comments like Trump's were a big reason for that, creating this cultural fear around Muslims, this hatred of cultures that were always viewed as being the other and the ones that attacked us, even though, of course, complete bullshit. More here. Trump bragging on September 11th, shortly after the towers collapsed, about his building now being the tallest.
You have one of the landmark buildings down in the financial district, 40 Wall Street. Did you have any damage, or what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest.
You have one of the landmark...
Imagine that being the first thing you go to. You're on the phone with a news station talking about what just happened, what is happening right now, Twin Towers collapsing, and the first thing you think about is, oh, your building's the tallest. It shows you the level of narcissism that Donald Trump has always had. Not just as president, but as a person. This is how he has always conducted himself. And he has seen success because of it. The American system, American society rewards people who are narcissistic, who are overly confident without having the actual experience to back it up. And it wasn't just words. In fact, the feds gave Donald a quick bundle. He's among titans who got 9/11 funds set for small businesses. Donald Trump got money because of 9/11. Money that was set aside for small businesses. And this is how he's always conducted himself. Take. does whatever he can to benefit off of the misery of others, and then turns around and never offers any real help to anybody. It's the legacy of Donald Trump. And also worth pointing out here that during this pandemic, the U.S. has seen multiple 9/11s a week. Imagine there were 2 9/11 style terrorist attacks a week over the past 6 months. I feel like the reaction would be a little different than the reaction we're seeing from Congress and Trump on the virus. People need real help. They need health care. They need financial help. They're being evicted. And the number's at what? 180,000 now dead from the virus. You see here the daily new confirmed COVID-19 deaths per million people. The U.S. at the top right now. And I mean, if we break this down in terms of just cases, because the other thing with this is it's not just about deaths. It's about how many people actually have the virus. Because the one thing about this virus, even if you don't die from it, it still has long-term health impacts on your life. So there are people who had COVID-19 who recovered, or quote-unquote recovered, but they still suffer from breathing issues, still suffer from insomnia, other medical issues, and glaucoma is one that I saw. So there are people who had COVID-19, thought they recovered, and now they have lifelong health effects because of it. So to also just focus on deaths, I think it would be wouldn't give you the full picture. But this is the legacy of Trump, and it's important to understand that this virus is not being taken as seriously as it should. If you were having the kind of destruction and damage that 9/11 had on American lives, if you were having that as an attack every single day or every week, the response would be a lot different than it is right now. All right. It's enough of the depressing shit. Let's move on, please. This entire week has really been just one giant slog. So hopefully the way I put today together, hopefully I got something better next. Okay, I kind of do. But before I get there, let me get some chats. Also, since I'm horrible at marketing myself, I have a Twitch show every morning, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time. Come check it out, twitch.tv/TheRationalNational. Link is below. It's more of a laid back kind of chat, morning chat kind of show. It's just an hour long, but it's a fun time, so come join. Jordan Tomney sends a super sticker. Thank you, Jordan. Ben Gonzalez says, watch Battle for Chile. It's a 3-part documentary about Chile under Allende and then Pinochet. It's a wonderful and saddening experience. So check that out. Battle for Chile. Samo says, thoughts on Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri tweet of supporting Chiefs fans booing during a moment of unity to support BLM. It was disgusting. I did not see Josh Hawley's tweet. I missed that. But it sounds like he's a piece of garbage. So I'm not sure what other analysis I can give there. That sounds, if that's what he did, then that's pretty horrible. Yeah, also, my God. Sports fans, at least when it comes to the NFL, and I mean, you could put NASCAR in there as well, and the NHL, not largely, but at least portions of NHL fans. Yeah, that mentality is all too all too popular, I guess. A lot of sports fans are just, I don't know what it is. Conservative, I guess. I don't know. That or people that are on the left that are into sports are not as loud when it comes to the NFL and NASCAR and the NHL. Shrug Shoulder says, thank you for touching on the issues that we face. You're a handsome lad, and I like your hair any way you style it. Thank you. My hair is different every goddamn day. I really don't know what to do with it. The Sing on the Left says, that fear also directly impacted me as a Sikh in high school, being harassed, threatened, called a terrorist. The entire Sikh community suffered greatly. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Because it wasn't just Muslims. It was anybody that was brown, essentially. Anybody that was from the Middle East. There was definitely a shit ton of racism and hatred towards members of the Sikh community, Muslims, across the board. And it continues to this day. I mean, 9/11 kicked it off, and I think in the years after 9/11, it was probably the worst. But at least, I mean, what we're seeing now is a massive rise in hate crimes from the right. Right-wing terrorism is the biggest threat right now in America, and it's rarely ever discussed. Of course, when after 9/11, the only terrorism that was ever discussed was, terrorists from the Middle East potentially killing Americans. But now that right-wing terrorism from white people is the biggest threat, rarely ever touched on, rarely ever discussed. Samantha Sider says, sad date for U.S. and Chile. Love to everyone still affected. Okay. Maker of Things says, brave enough to start talking extinction yet. I don't know what you're talking about. Extinction of humanity? Let's not get too depressing. Let's not get too down in the dumps. Though it's already too late for this week. All right. Next story. I will try to liven up a little bit. All right. All right. So I came across this CNBC poll that I found to be rather disheartening. Check this out. Jeff Stein here posts CNBC poll, quote, majorities of likely voters believe that both men are mentally unfit. Let me show you the details here. The mental and physical fitness of both candidates has been brought up in various ways during the campaigns, and majorities of likely voters believe that both men are mentally unfit. 55% of likely national voters, 51% of likely battleground voters say Trump is mentally unfit to be president, which I would agree with. 52% of likely national and battleground voters say Biden is mentally unfit to be president, which I would agree with, but he is clearly not as dangerous, I would say, as Trump is right now. But this is, it's just sad. We're essentially reliving 2016. Though I would say, I would assume Hillary would have had better numbers back then, and I think she likely did when it came to mental fitness, if there were even polls about this in 2016. But really, the other piece this shows you is that, or the other thing this shows you, is that people are not really voting for these candidates. Now, obviously, caveat there, Trump has a lot of diehard supporters, and I would say largely his base that is voting for him are voting for him and not voting against Biden. But when it comes to Biden, especially when you look at enthusiasm, before I get to enthusiasm, I just want to address this as well. Voters are more confident in their physical fitness. 51% of national voters and 52% of likely voters in the battleground say Trump is physically fit to be president. 57% of likely national voters and 54% of likely battleground voters say Biden is physically fit to be president. Biden's obviously been in better shape physically than Trump is, but I don't know what physical fitness for president even really means. As long as you're not on the verge of death, I don't know how much this really matters. You can be overweight and be president. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Obviously, it's better if you're healthy, but regardless, mental fitness matters most, obviously. But now enthusiasm. So among Trump supporters, they are 65% enthusiastic, which actually I find kind of surprising. I would just assume most Trump supporters, I guess most are, but that the vast majority of Trump supporters would be binary in this, and if they're for Trump, then they are really excited to vote for him. But apparently, 65%. Biden, 48% of his supporters are enthusiastic. This makes a little more sense. Democratic voters are largely, at least compared to Republican voters, Democratic voters are more critical of their candidates, more critical of politicians. I don't know why anybody would be excited for Joe Biden. The only way you could really explain that is that people are excited for him because it means that Trump's gone. And if you look at other polling, that's largely what's driving Biden's support. And I'll get to more polling later on in this live stream, comparing polling and showing you that even though there's this big enthusiasm gap, Biden's support is still well above Trump's right now in national polling and battleground states. So while enthusiasm usually is a major indicator of who's going to win the election, as it was in 2016, it doesn't really matter this time. As there is so much hatred for Trump, that is largely what is driving Biden supporters. So even a lack of enthusiasm isn't going to be that much of an impact. But I still go back to just this reality that the majority of likely voters think both people running for president are mentally unfit. The other thing this shows you, I think, is that people are also voting understanding that it's not just about the individual. It's also about the party. It's about the administration. It's about what they represent. And a vote for Biden represents the Democratic Party. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're excited for Biden, but it does mean that you're getting out Trump and replacing a Trump administration with Democrats. So that largely, I think, is what is driving this election. Okay. Man, I'm all over the place today. You can tell this week wrecked me. I am mentally unfit to host this show. That's where I'm at right now. Liz Beesmeer, Super Chat says, have you seen the Paul Krugman tweet? Yeah, I did. In fact, I should have included that in my 9/11 video on Trump, but it seemed kind of out of place for me to include it, so I didn't. But yeah, Paul Krugman basically saying that largely there was no hatred towards Muslims after 9/11. Like, what are you talking about? Let me see if it's possible he's pulled it down because it was so stupid. Let me check this out. Actually, Warren Gunnels, longtime Bernie staffer, had a great response to it. If I can find his tweet. All right. Just since it was referenced, this is the tweet in question. Overall, Americans took 9/11 pretty calmly. Already Already we're in crazy territory. Americans took 9/11 calmly? All right. Notably, there wasn't a mass outbreak of anti-Muslim sentiment and violence, which could all too easily have happened. I don't understand how somebody could tweet this and not see how stupid it is. Just take a second. Maybe do a little research. Maybe actually the poll I showed earlier, if I can pull that up, the where is it? Hate crime increase. This hate crime incidents against Muslims after 9/11. How can anybody possibly say that there wasn't a mass outbreak of anti-Muslim sentiment? And by the way, this is just, as another super chatter point out, this is just against Muslims. People that are Sikh were also targeted as people thought they were Muslims. So this doesn't even really encapsulate the entire picture, but showing you Muslims alone, the increase in hate crimes here. And Warren Gunnels quote tweeted it saying, Trump lied, over 190,000 died. Bush Cheney lied, over 1 million died. Enough with the revisionist bullshit. Thank you, Warren. All right. Let me grab 2 more chats here before I move on to the next story. A California Guitarzan says the air quality is so bad here in Battleground, Washington. It's on the north side of Portland, Oregon area. The AQI is 509. Air quality index, I imagine, is 509. I don't need to evacuate due to the fires, but it's hard to breathe outside. Yeah, I really don't know what to say. I covered those orange and red skies earlier this week. I am so lucky to live basically in the middle. Like, I'm not near any hurricanes, not near any forest fires. At least right now, things are largely pretty good in terms of avoiding any sort of natural disasters. So, yeah, when I see shit like this, I feel for you, because I cannot imagine living there right now. Unable to really go outside because it's impossible to breathe. Sky orange, red. Not seeing the sun for probably a week. Yeah. Yet, even Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, doesn't think a Green New Deal is enough, or not enough. Doesn't think it's possible. She calls it the Green Dream or whatever. And it's not just her. It's almost the entire party, and of course all of Congress. Lawrence says the rise of fascism is making it hard to be mentally stable. Yes. Yes, it is. I often feel like I'm losing my mind. Covering this every day, and look, I enjoy what I do. Don't get me wrong. I like the freedom that I have. I like having the show. I like informing people. I enjoy what I do. But the content absolutely gets you down. It's impossible for it not to. If all you're consuming all day is news and politics, it's almost all negative, all the time. Like during the primary, there was the outlet that we had Bernie Sanders doing really well in the first 3 states. The Nevada caucus, credible result there. And yeah. Then it all came crashing down, and the depression wave was real. So, yeah, this is also part of the reason why, I know people get annoyed because I talk about it so often, but it's really important to get Trump out. It's super important to get Trump out. It's at least a move towards a more... it's a move towards a discussion that we can actually have about policy, about politics. There's no discussion right now with this monster in the White House. He takes up the airwaves 24/7, Trump on television. There was a time before 2015 when he started his run, where I could ignore every story about Trump. Trump said something. He obviously wants attention. I ignore it because who cares? It's celebrity. I don't care. Can't ignore it now. It's almost like if Candace Owens, if she became president, it'd be the same shit. I muted Candace a long time ago, along with a lot of these people that are just there to that are there for attention. I suggest you do as well. And it's not just right-wingers. Soledad O'Brien, I bring her up because Susan Sarandon had a tweet thread with her recently. I muted Soledad a long time ago. There are certain people that are liberals and on the right that you don't need to hear from. But when they're the president, can't really ignore it. So that's my life. Please get the man out of power. Let's have some real conversations. And I want to see Bernie Sanders, AOC, Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush. I want to see them in Congress pissed off and fighting Democratic leadership for more. That's what I'm looking forward to. And by the way, if they don't do that, you can bet I will be here pushing them to do that, because that's when they have actual power. They have no power right now. With the GOP holding the Senate, Trump having the White House, they have no real power. Especially, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, not in Congress yet. But if Democrats have the Senate, the White House, and the House, that opens up the conversation. That allows us to have these debates. That allows us and allows them to challenge Democratic leadership in a way that they can't do right now with Trump in power. Anyways, pausing on the questions to prep the next story. Good. There's a good story next. Thank God. It's feeling a little down, but we got some solid clips coming up from the Green Party debate last night. This is pretty great. All right. All right. So last night was the Green Party of Canada debate, and I have a couple clips to show you. Now, before I get to these clips, full disclosure, I back one of the candidates. I back Dimitri Lascaris, but it's going to become pretty obvious as to why. If you watch this entire debate, and most of you did not, maybe none of you did, it was largely embarrassing. And in a variety of ways. I don't want to get too deep into it. I don't want to, create enemies here, but some of the responses from some of the candidates just outrageous for a Green Party debate. Completely outrageous. And a lot of technical issues with the debate. Anyways, let's not get too deep into that, because let's keep this positive. There were a couple of great moments. I want to show you why I support Dimitri Lascaris. So this is a guy I interviewed, I think 2 weeks ago now. The vote for the leader begins on the 26th of this month, September. So if you are a Green Party member, which you should be by now, you have to be by now to be able to vote, make sure you vote for Dimitri. So let me show you the first clip here. And for the live audience, because I'll cut this in later, this is from QuickTime. So I got to do a little rejigging. Is there a way to do this and not show Trudeau's face? Okay. Maybe if I go down here. No, it's not going to work. Whatever. I'll just show it like this, and then I'll have to go back to my regular screen.
Everyone participating in this discussion, I have no doubt, doesn't like Donald Trump or agree with any of his policies. But Joe Biden is not really offering any significant change in policy in Latin America or the Middle East with regards to the 800 US military bases around the world. How would you, as Prime Minister, deal with Washington under Biden or Trump? Dimitri, so far we're having a lot of agreement. I think that'll change as we get to other questions. Dimitri.
It's about to change. I'm surprised to hear that Chrystia Freeland is an example that we should all follow. Shortly after she was appointed foreign minister, the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa sent a cable to Washington saying that Canada had adopted an America First foreign policy. And that's precisely what we did under Chrystia Freeland. There's no better example of this than the Canadian government's slavish approach to the situation in Venezuela. With respect to Joe Biden was the vice president when the United States participated in the destruction of Libya. Joe Biden was the vice president when the Obama administration immunized CIA torturers for culpability for what they did with waterboarding under the Bush and Cheney administration. And he was also the vice president when the United States pursued a drone program in the Middle East principally, which constituted a series of heinous war crimes. In the foreign policy domain, there really isn't much difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I'm very concerned about the fact that the Trump administration just imposed sanctions on the prosecutors of the International Criminal Court. We need to take a strong stand in support of the International Criminal Court prosecutors, give them safe haven, provide financial support to the ICC to ensure that they fulfill their mission of holding American war criminals accountable. At the same time, we have to recognize that we have allies in the United States, people who want to see a humane foreign policy, people like Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Senator Merkley. And we have to reach out to them, build alliances, and make clear that the American people are not our enemies. The problem here is the US government, which oppresses many Americans just as much as it is oppressing people in the developing world. So we need to build those alliances within the United States, an alliance of non-belligerent countries internationally, and we need to plot a truly independent foreign policy in which no country, including the US, is exempt from international law.
All right. So, as you see there, Dimitri Lascaris is well-versed in foreign policy, understands the role that the U.S. has played and how Canada has just gone along with all of it. And I got a few examples here. A reminder, I do have one more clip coming up. But he mentioned this during his response. Canada adopts America First foreign policy. U.S. State Department boasted in 2017 with the appointment of Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland. So this was... So in case you're wondering why that was brought up, another... somebody else in the debate, and this goes to part of the embarrassment of this debate, brought up Chrystia Freeland as someone to look to when it comes to foreign policy. A Green Party debate. They pointed to the liberal Chrystia Freeland. When her approach, and as I'm going to show some examples here, and not even just her approach, the recognition from Americans that she's just going right along with U.S. foreign policy, for this to be mentioned in a Green Party debate as someone to look to is completely insane. So just to read this little piece here, the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa boasted in a March 2017 memo that, quote, Canada adopts America's first foreign policy just after PM Trudeau appointed hardline hawk Chrystia Freeland as foreign minister. So, of course, Ben Norton here goes into a deeper story on this, but I mean, it that was maybe one of the most shocking parts of this debate when that came up. But to give you other examples, this happened today. In fact, I could almost do just a story on this. UN experts report on Yemen war names Canada as one of arms suppliers fueling the conflict. So Canada is now being named by the UN as being a major part of the problem when it comes to the war in Yemen, because Canada sold armored vehicles to the Saudis that they used in this war. Yet no, Gotta look to Chrystia Freeland and Trudeau. Great example of how to handle foreign policy. Also, Venezuela, as Dimitri brought up, Canada hosts Lima Group meeting to find solutions to Venezuela crisis. Canada has been a major player when it comes to Venezuela and propping up Guaido as Venezuela's legitimate leader, even though he is not democratically elected, but trying to put him into that position, again, going right along with U.S. foreign policy. And in many ways, when it comes to Venezuela, you could say leading on this issue. One more clip here. So a lot of this debate was really focused on foreign policy, which I was surprised to see, but it was nice to see. So one more clip here from Dimitri.
Desmond Tutu has compared Israel's position toward Palestine to the apartheid regime in South Africa. Canada currently has sanctions against 19 different countries. Should Canada consider sanctioning Israel?
Well, when Elizabeth May came back from the West Bank in 2018, she stood in Ottawa at a press conference, and you can see this on YouTube, and standing beside two other MPs said that what Israel is doing to occupied Palestinians is much worse than apartheid in South Africa. This was a view that was echoed by Professor Noam Chomsky. It was a view that was echoed by John Dugard, a South African human rights lawyer, former UN Special Rapporteur for the human rights situation in occupied Palestine. This is also the view adopted by international jurist Richard Falk, who concluded recently in a meticulous report that the evidence Israel is committing the crime of apartheid is overwhelming. I must say that this is not a political judgment. Apartheid has a specific definition in international law. This is a legal judgment that must be based upon legal principles and the facts are undeniable. If we supported BDS, sanctions in some form being applied to the apartheid regime in South Africa, there is absolutely no reason in good conscience that we would not equivocally and clearly say that we support the use of well-designed economic sanctions to bring to an end the apartheid racist regime to which Palestinians have been subjected for decades. I have been clear about this. I sponsored a resolution in the Green Party of Canada which called for economic sanctions on Israel. It was ratified with over 90% support ultimately. And we are the only party today in Parliament that officially calls for economic sanctions on Israel. I think that that's something that we should all be proud of, because it is exactly what is required if you're dealing seriously with international law and want to act in accordance with conscience.
So he absolutely killed it. If you saw some of the responses from some of the other candidates, and I'm not going to show them because a lot of them don't have a large audience. I don't need to kickstart, destroying any of their careers. But my God, truly embarrassing, some of the other responses. But apart from that, Dimitri here completely nailed it and has been involved in trying to push the Green Party into the correct position. And by the way, I love that he brought up South Africa, because this is a way to help explain how twisted the narrative is right now with Israel-Palestine. Because sanctions were supported. BDS was a part of ensuring true freedom in South Africa. Yet when it comes to Israel-Palestine, no. It's too extreme. Yet how is it so extreme if the exact same approach was applied before? Again, this is a non-violent approach. BDS is non-violent. Yet too extreme. So I want to show you this. South African MP Mandla Mandela calls for civil society to support BDS. So this is Nelson Mandela's grandson. And Mandela calls on international civil society to ask their governments to support the boycott of Israel in the same way they did with South Africa. The South African leader, grandson of Nelson Mandela, analyzed on a video conference the similarities between Israeli and South African apartheid. So Nelson Mandela's grandson supports BDS. How can anybody possibly view this as extreme? Again, this goes to the issue with the media narrative, and unfortunately, Even candidates for the Green Party leadership are propping up that bullshit, despite the fact that history is not on their side. I'm going to show you Manla Mandela here discussing his support for BDS.
BDS is playing a crucial role in bringing Palestinians together and in ensuring that they fight a common enemy, that being the brutal apartheid regime of Israel. BDS upholds the simple principle that Palestinians are entitled to the same rights as the rest of humanity. We are making a global call in support of BDS because BDS is not rallying on partisan lines. It is calling on all Palestinians to unite against a common enemy, to boycott divestment, and ensure we are able to place sanctions against the apartheid Israeli regime.
So this is a no-brainer. And you know, it's unfortunate that it is so that it's impressive when a political leader comes out in support of this. And I'm talking about Dimitri Lascaris. It shouldn't be surprising. It shouldn't be impressive. It should be obvious because all the facts are on the side of supporting BDS. Yet, even in a Green Party debate, it was heavily contested. So, anyways, you got to support Dimitri. Absolutely fantastic. He's the only, if you watch that debate, and if you're a Green Party member, go watch that debate. You can find it online. Just search up Green Party debate over the past week and YouTube search, you'll see it. There is no comparison. Everybody else was way out of their element. And it also appeared no one else really had a clear vision. I mean, look, there were a couple of other candidates who weren't bad. I will say that. I'm forgetting their names now, unfortunately. But there were a couple of Maryam and so Amita Kudner and Maryam Haddad. So they were largely solid, but they don't have the experience that Dimitri has, and they don't have the clarity in vision in being able to communicate their vision that Dimitri has. And also, Dimitri is I believe second place in fundraising and has the most small dollar support. So, and he's second only behind I believe Glenn Murray, who is a former liberal. There is a former liberal running for Green Party leadership. Man, look, if you're in the Green Party in Canada, I understand liking some of these other candidates, or at least two of these other candidates, but it's important to consolidate the vote, because the only way we're going to lose this leadership race is if our vote is split up among multiple candidates. If we all consolidate our vote around Dimitri, who has the best shot right now at leadership, then he can win. And imagine the change in discussion. Imagine the kind of debate we can have, especially when it comes to foreign policy, which right now we have a very, very narrow discussion with foreign policy in Canada. Imagine the kinds of discussions we can have as a country, in the media, if he becomes the leader of the Green Party. So make sure you pay attention to what's going on, and vote for Dimitri when voting starts later this month. All right. Sorry to give you, for any of you non-Canadians, that didn't apply to you at all, but I'm sure you find it interesting to see Canadians discussing American foreign policy. But I needed to get that message out there. People, we have to have a proper Canadian debate here on policy. Our conversations in Canada are so narrow. Like, of course, they're nowhere near as far right as they are in the U.S., obviously, but they're so just within this very narrow framework of what is acceptable, especially on foreign policy. There's a very little deviation from the status quo on foreign policy. Okay. Let me grab some chats and then get to the next story. Lawrence says did I read this already? Yes, I did. The Sing on the Left says Trump just said that we in California should have cleaned our floors. And now we should... Wait, what? Trump just said that we in California should have cleaned our floors. And that we should pay for it even though the federal government is in charge of that. Cleaned our floors. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Just cleaning your floors? Is there a typo in there? Anyways, I'm sure Trump said something crazy. He does every day. I covered his press conference yesterday, and I was just watching it. Like I hadn't clued in the fact that I should be streaming it because I just turned it on while I was researching for another story, and I was taken in by how insane it was that I went live with that. It's every day. It's every day. You just get rid of him, vote him out. We can all move on. And yeah, there's a lot to discuss about that as well in terms of how he's threatening the election, how it's very likely that on election day you will not get the final result because there's going to be a lot more mail-in balloting, and mail-in balloting largely that's what Democrats are for the most part doing, is mail-in balloting, or at least more than Republicans are. So Biden is likely to win, but not till days later. And in that stretch of time, Trump's going to try and claim victory, try to steal the election, try and stop the counts, the voting count. It just, God, I just want to fast forward to next year when this man's out of power, and there's nothing more I would rather do than be able to focus my energy and effort fighting a Joe Biden administration and propping up people like Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, and the rest. Nick Martiro says, David, thanks for your advice about discussing politics and for featuring my question in a video. Oh, yeah. Hey, Nick. Just to be clear, the reason I asked about heated arguments is because of my fear of getting into one. Oh. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, so Nick last week asked about what's the best way to talk about politics without getting into a heated argument. And basically, my approach is just listen. Listen above all else. Like, hear out the other person. Hear what they're dealing with, or what their issue is. Ask them, and of course, look, this doesn't apply across the board. If you're talking to a MAGA chud, good luck. If you're talking to someone decked out, MAGA hat, Trump face on the shirt, Trump decal on the truck, you're not getting through to that person. But other people you could talk to, if you happen to be in a discussion with somebody who is undecided if they still exist, or just isn't all that informed, listen to what their problems are. Be it wages, maybe they're stuck in their job because they have good health care, but they want to leave their job. Well, guess what? Medicare for All would allow you to leave that job. Anyways, there are different ways to jump into various policy discussions, but always start with what that person's struggling with, what they're going through, and then you can offer up, various suggestions of who's fighting for what. But also ensure you're not trying to, just argue your side. Like, plant seeds. Don't expect to leave a conversation and turn somebody into a Bernie supporter or something, or AOC supporter in 5 minutes. Just plant seeds and then walk away. The person will eventually maybe do a little research themselves, or come around and think about the arguments you made, and it'll allow them to maybe open up in terms of their own thinking when it comes to these issues. All right. Going to stop there on the questions so I can get to this next story. I'm going to go to polling. There are a couple of stories here I did not truly prep, but I do want to get to them later in some form. And that's Susan Sarandon and Soledad O'Brien, just because it's sort of an enjoyable Twitter exchange. And then Obama discussing climate. But let me get to some other stuff first. I want to give you an update on the race. Trump versus Biden. Who's in the lead right now? What do these swing states look like? Let's check it out. Real Clear Politics poll average. Right now we got Biden on top, leading with a 7.5 spread. And as you see here, it's pretty consistent. Every single pollster has Biden in the lead, everywhere from 2 points to 12 points. So it's looking pretty good nationally right now. Of course, as I always say, national doesn't mean a whole lot if you lose the Electoral College. But this is by a wider margin than Hillary had during this time. So it gives you maybe a little indication in terms of what to expect. But let's go to some battleground states here. Ohio. Biden up by 2.4. Not as comfortable as I would like, but it's still a lead. Let's check out Wisconsin. Biden leading by 6.5, looking much better in Wisconsin, which is, to me, look at where this race was back in March, April. Like, this was a state that Trump, in many polls at that time, had been leading everybody, every primary candidate. But now it's pretty clearly for Biden. So that's looking good. Let's check out Florida. Not so great. Biden leading by 1.2. This has narrowed considerably recently. This is going to be a tough one. Again, Biden doesn't need Florida, but it'd be nice to have. Maybe check out one or two more. Michigan. Biden leading in Michigan by 4.2. See how the race looks there. It's narrowed considerably recently, but now Biden's going back up. So there was, if you remember, I think I did a video on this a couple weeks ago. There was about a week there where it looked like Trump was coming back and Biden was dropping. And this is around the time that happened. But it appears to have now at least began to bump back in Biden's favor. Maybe check one more. Let's check Arizona. Wow, look at that. Biden leading by 5.7 on average in Arizona. That's really good, actually. Much better than recently. So he is increasing his lead there. How about that? So as I've discussed in a million videos, what's largely driving the Biden vote is the anti-Trump vote. If you look at enthusiasm numbers, look at mentally stable numbers, neither candidate's doing very well. Biden's losing in enthusiasm, but the Democratic voters are not excited about Biden. They're excited about voting out Trump. And that's largely what's driving the vote this time. And it's different than 2016 because Trump has been president for 4 years. So in 2016, there was this question. What would a Trump presidency be like? Maybe it would be different. Maybe it would get better. Because how worse could it get? Well, it got worse. And you see now his handling of the coronavirus being a complete disaster, I think, showing, if there was any doubt, at least in the minds of people that you can consider to be swing voters, even though there's not many of those people anymore. But if there was any doubt in their minds, largely they have swung over to Biden. And also, I believe, this coronavirus has also activated a lot of people who didn't expect to vote or didn't want to vote, didn't like either candidate or don't like either candidate. But now we're seeing just the complete disaster Trump is on the virus compared to every other country, practically every other country except for, Brazil, another neo-fascist country. So when comparing the U.S. to other countries worldwide, you really get an indication as to how horrible Trump has done on the virus. And that's right now pushing Biden, or continues to push Biden in this race. And I think it's clearly why he's leading. Okay. Quick little polling update. Let me grab more chats. I had a salad for lunch today, and I'm not sure if it's worked out. Though I gotta say, I don't feel hungry. I thought I'd be hungry. I don't really feel hungry. but I do feel like I'm missing something. Where was I here? Shrugged Shoulders says, ton of laws need to be removed from the books. The Patriot Act, the ASPA, etc. won't be done without our government. The old guard won't allow progression. Ryan S. says, David, are you registered a Green? I hope so. Yes, I am. I am registered to vote for the Green leadership at the end of this month. This thing on the left says, completely blanked in terms of all these fires. Blanketed? I don't know what you're trying to say. Just in reference to your past comment. Regardless, yeah, I discussed the fires earlier. I just don't. Climate change is an issue where it is the most important issue, I think. But in terms of our ability to do anything, like viewers, me, to do anything about this, what can we do? It's completely at the whims of people in power, and you can argue it's too late, which is why it's hard for me sometimes to discuss climate change, because if anything's going to be reversed, it had to have already happened. Like, we're late. The UN says we have 10 years left. Every single year, what are the headlines you see? Scientists shocked to discover that the Earth is warming more than they thought it would, or that there's less ice than they thought there would be. Every year we see those articles. So when it comes to these projections, we have 10 more years. That was maybe true 10 years ago. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything or can't do anything. We should do everything that we can. But we're completely reliant on who's in power. And you have to, the only way to maybe push for change is first have somebody in power that is susceptible to movements. Trump is not. He just throws them in jail. He gets out the police, the federal officials to throw people in jail. So Trump is not movable. I do think Biden is movable. I actually do think he is going to have a greater focus on climate change. And it's still not going to be enough. But Trump has reversed over 100 EPA protections, environmental protections. And he attempted to do things like restart the Dakota Access Pipeline that Obama shut down in his last year. So, while Democrats, of course, never do enough and aren't doing enough, Trump is reversing any progress that was made. And this entire conversation on climate just makes me depressed. Anna Jackson says, how USA handles BDS is garbage. I wish more of us can be down with it like Dimitri. 100%. Even Bernie Sanders, I believe, is not supporting BDS, and he is wrong. Ryan Craig says Biden will do nothing for you. He won't change. The bleeding will stop, at the very least. And the cultural, when it comes to, look at the virus. Compare the U.S. to the U.K. that has a conservative government. They brought their numbers down. Trump doesn't give a shit about people. He's not doing anything. So there is a major difference in that alone. But also, I don't know. I've discussed this a million times. I really don't want to go over these stupid comments. If you're not on board yet, I'm not going to convince you. So do whatever the hell you want. I don't know what more information you need. All right. Let's compare ads. How about that? That's the next story. and there may be copyright problems on this. So if you're watching this later and the audio's cut out, it's because the audio on these clips are copyright. One more thing I have to address. One more thing on the Biden-Trump comment. I can see you're a white guy. It's probably easy for you to not understand the cultural impact Trump has had, the massive rise in hate crimes that Trump has enabled over the past 4 years, to not recognize that. Sure, live in your bubble. Everything's great for you. How about attempting to understand how other people are experiencing life? And understand this is not a vote for Biden. You're voting for the person you rather fight. Do you want to fight a fascist? It's not very fun, is it? Not much happening right now. Reversing every fucking thing. Any little progress that was made was reversed under Trump. Causing us to waste time fighting those fights again. Like, we have to fucking waste time to get back in the Paris Climate Accord. A bullshit accord that barely did anything to begin with, but it was at least the beginning of something. And we have to waste time to get back in that. Are you paying no attention at all to what is going on in the world? Do you have no attachment to reality? It blows my mind that there are still people that are this fucking selfish. But whatever. Do what you want to do. All right. Biden and Trump have released a couple of 1-minute ads that I want to share with you. So you're going to notice a completely different approach to campaigning between these two candidates. Let me start here with Trump's ad. I don't even really have to intro it. Just watch this insanity.
1, 2, 3, 4. Slavery, genocide, and war. 5, 6, 7, 8. America was never great.
Your fellow citizens for exercising their rights to peacefully protest. Peacefully protest. Peacefully protest. Peacefully protest.
All right. Let's start with the obvious here. This is Joe Biden's America? Who's president right now? It's not Joe Biden. It's Donald Trump. Everything he showed you is Donald Trump's America. This, and by the way, this is coming, I believe, on the exact same day that the tape was leaked, or day after, the tape was leaked about Trump wanting to downplay the virus and then defending that by saying that he didn't want to, get people scared. He didn't want to create any, I forget the exact word now that he used, but fear. Like he didn't want to get people scared over the virus. That's why he downplayed it. So in case you missed that story, I don't know how you missed that story, but back in February, Trump on tape discussing how he purposely downplayed the virus, even though he knew how dangerous it was. And his excuse being that he didn't want to panic people. Well, what the fuck is this? This is all panic. This is all he's doing. This is their only approach here. And really, look, he can try to do this. I don't know who this works on, who aren't already Trump supporters. Maybe parts of the elderly population who see this and think, yeah, this is Joe Biden's America, even though Donald Trump's the fucking president. But there you go. That's Trump's approach. Continue fear-mongering, offering nobody anything. How many dead now from the virus? Compare that to other countries. Complete disaster when it comes to the coronavirus. Killing over almost 200,000 people at this point. Yeah. Here's Joe Biden's ad, which, look, they have been pretty horrible at ads for the most part. But check this one out.
This is our chance to put the darkness of the past 4 years behind us, to end the anger, the insults, the division, the violence, and start fresh in America. We can stop focusing on a president who thinks it's all about him and start focusing on what's best for us. We need to get control over the virus. Donald Trump failed. Joe Biden will get it done. We need to help working families. Joe Biden's plan rewards work and makes the wealthy and corporations pay their fair share. We need to take the next step in healthcare. Joe Biden will lower premiums and reduce drug costs while still protecting those with pre-existing conditions. We need to take on climate change and protect Social Security and Medicare. We've had 4 years of a president who brings out the worst in America. Isn't it time we had a president who brought out the best?
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
So I don't love that ad either, but it's not what Donald Trump's trying to pull. I think it's important, though, that they mention, of course, the virus, but also, some policies people need, be it Medicare expansion or Medicaid expansion, Social Security. The issue with the Joe Biden campaign so far for me has been that he hasn't talked enough about policy, and which would be fine if he really had nothing at all, and he doesn't have a lot, but he does have $15 an hour minimum wage. He does have lowering the Medicare age, expanding healthcare in some sense, of course, not Medicare for all, obviously, but climate change, completely different approach to climate change when it comes to, Trump versus Biden. Trump has reversed over 100 environmental protections. So there is something to work with there. It's not a lot, something to work with. Though I have to say, look, I understand the approach to both. I understand the approach of offering people something in an ad. I also understand the approach of just pointing out the failure of Donald Trump. And he has some other ads, mostly on social media, I think, that do a lot of that as well. But largely, neither of these ads are all that impressive, but clearly one actually offers a vision. He's at least attempting to offer a vision here, Joe Biden is, whereas Donald Trump, once again, offers nothing but fear. All right, maybe we'll get to Sarandon. Susan Sarandon. Maybe. Likely. Sean is a Cubs fan, says, my best friend's older brother is a cop and good guy, and he said defund the police is stupid. How do I get him to understand the point? I'm not sure you're going to convince a cop because here's the fact. Defund the police also means that his job could be in jeopardy. Defund the police means less cops. It means moving those resources into other areas. So when it comes to mental health calls, moving a lot of that money into public health care. Look, there's a way you could describe it where it does benefit. Like if your best friend's older brother is actually a good guy, then I don't think he'd be a cop. I'm just putting it out there. I think he would recognize the problem. He would see what the issue is. And if he was actually a good cop, he likely would be one of the ones cut if they defund the police. So I'm not sure you're going to convince him, and honestly, I don't think you have to. So it's the approach has been, look, the approach when it comes to these budgets over the past 30 years, 40 years, has been continued increases in law enforcement. You look at any of these city budgets. Actually, Wisconsin, because I covered this more recently, there's a report on this. I believe it was a 30% increase in law enforcement in Wisconsin as a whole, while there's been cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, cuts to infrastructure, cuts to every other area except for policing. And it's because of the power of these police unions. So, and by the way, while those increases, while you've seen those increases, there has not been a, these cities haven't gotten better because of it. So it's a whole different approach to policing. Understanding that if you take away, okay, so here's a way you could possibly try and at least discuss it, though I don't think you're going to convince him, because again, it could lead to the end of his job. But because police have so many different responsibilities, it's normal to not be great at each of those responsibilities. So if you have 10 different responsibilities, 10 different types of calls, if you take away, 3 of those, then you're more likely as a police officer, as a police force, to do better at your job when you have just 8 different kinds of calls, and say you take away mental health calls, take away calls about the homeless. So by narrowing down what police officers are responsible for, there's going to be less opportunity for them to screw up. And it's going to narrow down what they have to do, what they focus on. And this comes to, it's not to excuse anything police have done, because of course, especially when it comes to how do you shoot somebody in the back, or shoot a child, or put your knee on someone's neck for 10 minutes? How do you not fucking know that's wrong? But apart from the obvious, just anybody's job. If you have 1,000 tasks, you're not going to be as good at those 1,000 tasks as if you had, only 100 tasks. So that just goes to how you could try and sell it, but honestly, you don't need his support. You can describe why you support it, but you're never. This is the other thing when it comes to any kind of discussion like this. You're not going to convince somebody in the moment. You can try and plant seeds, but it's not worth trying to convince them in that discussion, because you very likely are not going to. Mariposa says, is it just me, or is Howie Hawkins such a disappointing candidate after Jill Stein? Also, who do you think would fare better in 2024 for presidency, AOC or Nina Turner? Thanks for being awesome. Thank you, Mariposa. I've barely paid attention to Howie Hawkins. So I heard I've heard things about, him not being as solid on many of the issues as Jill Stein was. So, but honestly, I don't really care. This is an election where it's about voting somebody out, and these don't happen very often. But there is, because of the cultural impact Trump has had, and the ability to dump this crisis on a left wing, or I should say on a Democratic Party that's not left wing yet, the ability for you to dump this crisis on the Democratic Party and make the case for why neoliberalism is garbage and why the status quo, the Joe Biden status quo, is not enough. This is the perfect time, the perfect opportunity that you have to build a case for the left. Because Biden's not going to offer Medicare for all. He's not going to offer a UBI. But you're going to have people in Congress offering those things, making that case. And there's going to be an actual debate, especially if Democrats control the White House, the Senate, and the House. So you have to look at it in a way that there's an ability to truly build a left movement under Biden because of that, because of dumping this crisis on him and him not being able to rise to the occasion. So when it comes to the Greens, I'm just not even paying attention. I don't think it's even worth it. And when it comes to AOC or Nina Turner, who would fare better? I think Nina would. I think AOC is just too young. I think she's great. I wouldn't be against her running, but if it's her or Nina, I would go with Nina Turner. I think Nina Turner really has the ability to reach out to potentially even conservatives. In a way, and maybe you could say it's because she hasn't been attacked in the media the way AOC has. So it's almost like the Hillary effect in that sense. But regardless, I think Nina would have the better shot, and I would be in full support of Nina Turner in 2024, hopefully challenging a Kamala Harris run. Shrugged Shoulders says, salad wasn't great. You didn't get enough greens. The salad was great, but I'm just, I don't know. I feel like I'm a little low on something. Ryan Sipe says, I know I said this last week, but everyone watching, please support progressive Jessica Scarrain. If you can, primary is 9/15, so that is next week. Green New Deal supporter. If she won, she would be the first millennial in U.S. Senate. Cool. All right. Whitehawk says, thoughts on people like Ryan Knight refusing to vote for Biden. As a fellow leftist, his stubbornness to grasp the importance of this voting is frustrating. I don't agree with him, but whatever. Like it's not worth, and I'm going to sound very hypocritical right now, considering what I just did earlier, but it's not worth getting too heated over one person's vote. It's just not. I disagree with Ryan Knight, and as you're going to see when I get to Susan Sarandon, she also disagrees, as does Cornel West, as does Marianne Williamson, as do many people that do not like Joe Biden, but understand the need to vote out a neo-fascist. So I think it's fine for him to make his case. And there are also some people who are taking the approach of they're going to fight Biden until the very end and then maybe still vote for him secretly. Okay, I guess that's fine. Though, let's be honest. If Biden actually came out to support what you wanted to support, would you really believe him? If tomorrow Biden came out and said Medicare for all, would you really believe him? So for me, it's not about what Biden vocally supports or doesn't support, though, of course, parts of his, when it comes to running a campaign, it would help him to run on those things. But in terms of my beliefs and, my scrutiny of Biden, I don't know if I would believe him to actually fight for anything that he would come out for now near the end of this campaign. So I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to continue fighting him, because even if he concedes, first of all, who are these random people online? He's not going to listen to random people online, for one. But even if he does, if he concedes, are you going to believe him? I wouldn't. So what are you really holding your vote for? For me, this is a vote about getting out Trump and then understanding that you can build a left under Biden. Ryan Craig is back. Hey, Ryan says, yeah, I'm a gay white guy in the most conservative part of the country, and these two parties have been shoved my throat for years. Dude, you're not here. You don't know. You don't. I don't know what. I don't know. Susan Sarandon agrees with me. Cornel West agrees with me. Marianne Williamson agrees with me. There are people, as I just finished saying, I don't need to go through the whole spiel again. People who are highly critical and continue to be highly critical of Joe Biden, but understand the importance of voting out a neo-fascist. If you don't get that, go back in history and look at the rise of Hitler. People didn't take him seriously. He was taken as a joke, and then see what happened there. And really, you don't even got to just look back over the past 6 months. Look at the virus. Compare the U.S. to other countries. Compare the U.S. to other neoliberal countries. Canada, the U.K., Australia. Massive difference when it comes to case count, when it comes to deaths. There's a difference when it comes to a pandemic like this, when it comes to a crisis. There's a difference between a neo-fascist and a neoliberal. And as I said earlier, you're able to build a left under Joe Biden because there's no question about what he supports. It's obvious. It's always been obvious based on his record, based on what he's fighting for. He's not Barack Obama, he doesn't have the talent, he doesn't have the platform, isn't pretending to be hope and change. So from the start, you have a built-in opposition from the left towards Biden that Obama didn't have in 2008. And by dumping this crisis on Joe Biden, you have the ability to grow the left and show people that neoliberalism isn't enough. So that's my approach to this election. Maniac Goon says, sorry, I can't in good conscience vote for either Trump or Biden. Nothing will fundamentally change. I have no empathy for millennials. Okay. I can't have the same conversation 1,000 times. All right. Next story. I'm running late today, or later than usual anyways. Oh, maybe not. I started late. What time did I start? Like 3:10? I think I'm losing my voice though. All right. Yeah, I'm losing my voice. Let me do Susan Sarandon. This is a great little exchange here online. All right. So there was a little Twitter back and forth that I want to jump into because it gets to a larger conversation about the election. Got to start here. Susan Sarandon tweets out, says, standing by proud socialist, who is Ryan Knight, and respect his courage in sharing his journey over the past few years. We need more Ryan Knights to stand up and speak truth to power every single day. Now, if you're wondering what the hell she's talking about, Ryan Knight recently came out and said he's not voting for Biden, making the case essentially in terms of why he can't vote for Biden. Now, I've made the case a million times. It's not a vote for Biden. You're voting for who you want to fight as president. When you have two choices this bad, you're not voting for who you like. In a primary, you get to vote for who you like. When you got these choices, voting is a tool. If you can't put all of your hopes and desires and dreams into a vote. That's not what it is. It's simply a tool. So based on the options presented, how you can use it, I think it makes sense to vote out the neo-fascist. Again, not voting for Biden, simply voting out the neo-fascist. But this is a fairly innocuous tweet. Like, nothing crazy here. Soledad O'Brien, someone who I have muted on Twitter, and I suggest you do the same, because she likes to hear the sound of her own voice, tweeted out saying, rich white lady reminding people of color why they shouldn't trust her take on anything. Now, this tweet, again, she's just standing up and saying, it's good to hear differing voices. What's the big deal here? This is where things get good. Susan comes back saying, I said I'm voting Biden against fascism and for down-ballot candidates who support Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and Black Lives Matter. After November, I will stand with Ryan to form a People's Party free from corporate and Wall Street ties. Maybe use your shaming energy to phone bank and ask Joe Biden to update his website. And I'm going to get into more of that in a second here. But this is the same approach that I would have, the same approach that Cornel West has, that Marianne Williamson have, where you can be openly critical and continue to be critical of Joe Biden and his horrible record, his inadequate platform, yet still understand you got to vote out the fascist. So while I respect Ryan Knight voicing his opinion and how he sees the vote, I don't see it that way. And I'm with Susan Sarandon here in what she's saying. But you see here already clearly shutting down this absurdity that is Soledad O'Brien. But watch what Susan Sarandon does here, because it really exposes how completely inadequate the Biden campaign is. And I discuss this all the time. People want to assume that the Democratic Party is always actively working against the left, which they are. Don't get me wrong, they are. But that, no, they're not inadequate. They're not horrible at strategy. They just rather lose the election than win. Which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But putting that aside, look at how out of date Biden's organizing toolkit is. So Susan Sarandon tweets out here, when you visit Biden's organizing toolkit and click on direct voter contact virtual phone bank guide, you're taken to an old doc about how to persuade primary voters and caucus goers. The Joe Biden campaign has not even updated their organizing toolkit to address the fact that he is the nominee. This is just straight up incompetence. They have a ton of money that they could be pouring into organizing, could be attempting to pour into phone banking, getting people engaged, ensuring that they are ready to vote or have their mail-in, their early voting ready, whatever it is. Yet, it's a toolkit that references the primaries. On the same page, the Making Phone Calls toolkit takes you to links for phone banking, scripts, instructions, and checklists, all outdated and referring to the primaries and caucuses. Then the Hosting Events toolkit suggests hosting events, including debate watching parties, in indoor spaces like homes, coffee shops, libraries, in the middle of a global pandemic. The Team Joe app guide tells us we have the chance to nominate Biden as our next Dem candidate, and the link to the Biden app is dead. Also, the instructions about how to use the app are irrelevant because there's a new version of it anyway. This is just total incompetence. They have the money, they have the resources, and it shows you that if they lose this election, all the blame goes to the campaign. All of it. How are they not able to capitalize right now on this insane pandemic that Trump has completely botched, on the state of the economy, the eviction crisis, the fact that people are living paycheck to paycheck if they have a paycheck at all? Biden should be ahead by 20, 30, 40 points. But they can't even get their organizing toolkit updated. Total friggin' incompetence. All right. Maybe that'll be the last time I ever have to talk about the election this week. Next week, of course, I'm sure I'll talk about it a million times. All right. I have more story. I have this Obama one on climate change. I don't know if I really care. You know what? Let me do this one more on a few Biden ads that I saw on social media. Because this is actually for an incompetent Biden campaign, not all that horrible. All right. So Trump has Biden. Biden has several new campaign ads. Let me start this again. Jesus Christ. No more salads for lunch. Though it was a good salad. Biden has a few new campaign ads out on social media that I want to share with you. And it's because I was actually kind of impressed by these. Now, for the most part, the TV ads from Biden haven't been all that great. Sort of been hit and miss. Biden has a platform he largely hasn't been running on, though there has been one recent ad that he is kind of utilizing. And of course, his platform is not nearly enough, but at least it's something to offer people. Anyways, these three ads, though, focus mostly on attacking Trump, and I think it's actually done fairly well. So let's check out the first one.
I watch some of the shows. I watched Liz McDonald. She's fantastic. I watched Lou Dobbs last night, Sean Hannity last night, Tucker last night, Laura, I watched Fox and Friends in the morning. You watch these shows.
I think that's pretty effective. I mean, you could almost lump this together with Trump golfing so damn much and the tweets he used to have about Barack Obama and golfing. But it's important to remind people in almost every single ad the state of the virus. But not even just this. You know, one way they could have maybe one up this is compare the U.S. numbers to other countries. Because it's easy for someone to just say, well, it's a pandemic. Of course, people are dying. The whole world's dealing with this. But when you compare the U.S. to other countries, as I do all the time on my channel, you see there is a clear difference between the case rate and the death rate compared to other countries. So that is something I would add to. I don't think any of these ads do that, but it's something I would add to these ads. Next one though, this goes to Trump's lies.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. This is more deadly.
I mean, view this the same as the flu. I really think, Doctor, you want to treat this like you treat the flu, right?
Some startling facts came out. It's not just older
exactly.
young people, to plenty of young people.
It's incredible how it's very unique how the children aren't affected.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Now, this one I think is really effective, and I hope they air this on television. This shouldn't just be a social media ad. This is the kind of thing where, when you have comparisons like this, and again, I covered this story this week where Trump was discussing with Bob Woodward how he was purposely playing down the virus. He discussed how he knew how deadly it was. I think he said 5 times more deadly than the flu. But he was pulling out these stats, discussing how dangerous the coronavirus was. Meanwhile, in public, saying something completely different. So offering this information up to the people, and hopefully in television ads, is a way to show you just how destructive Trump has been throughout this pandemic. One more here. Let's check this out.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
While Donald Trump was telling America the virus was nothing to worry about, he knew it was deadly.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. This is deadly stuff.
And now, 190,000 Americans are dead. Our economy crushed. Our kids not safe in school. And Trump knew it all along.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
I think this is also effective. They should milk these tapes for all they're worth. I mean, really, this was a damning piece of audio. And look, a lot of us in the know, I think we already figured that he knew how dangerous this was. If you follow Trump at all, the man is all about image. That's all he cares about, how he appears. So I'm sure he knew all along how dangerous the virus was. I mean, it was all over. It was public knowledge. But him privately acknowledging that he knew this, I mean, this goes one step further to showing you how much of how his lies aren't just about lying, the lies themselves, but it's about the actual impact on people's lives. Because it's one thing to be saying this stuff publicly, or playing it down publicly, if he was doing something behind the scenes to actually help the situation and ensure that, there's enough PPE, ensure people had real financial help, people had health care, but he wasn't doing that. He was both playing it down publicly and also not doing anything to help people behind the scenes either. So he was doing nothing. And it's exactly what led to the explosion in cases and deaths that the U.S. has seen in greater numbers compared to every other country. And this is really the one thing Biden should be running on. If he's going to pick one thing to run on, Trump's botched response to the coronavirus is the one to do. All right. I think I'm good on stories. If I got more chats, Yeah, I'm good. Let me grab if there's more chats. El Hombre Sin Nombre says, Uncle Joe and Trump have been shoved down everybody's throat, not just one person. The need of the many outweigh the need of the few. Gillerax says, talk about how Jason Kenney and the UCP voted to block the former. They fired him. Election commissioner to present to the commission reviewing the Election Act in Alberta. This is corruption. I got to look more into it. You know, I'm one guy. So when it comes to Alberta, I have not been paying too much attention to Alberta. But I should. Yeah, Jason Kenney's another one that we got to watch for. The thing on the left says, breaking news. Governor Newsom signed a law today that expunges convict firefighters' records that allow them to become real firefighters when they get out. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. I also couldn't fit this story in. Gavin Newsom. If I can find this now. Maybe I can find this. Here we go. I think this is it. Yeah. Since we're on the topic of Gavin Newsom, he granted 48 new fracking permits since April. 48 new fracking permits since April. This is the guy that is often seen as being, or is referred to by conservative commentators as being crazy far left, while he's approving or granting fracking permits. So there's your Gavin Newsom. But hey, at least the firefighters are free, I guess. Not saying it's a bad policy, but he's not helping the situation too much. All right. Is that it? I think that was it. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for showing up. Today was a bit of a weird one. I just feel this week, I'm just not feeling it. I'm just not feeling the news. Super depressing, super shitty. Wish the stories are at least a little more hopeful. But yeah, things are kind of effed up right now. At the very least, Green Party debate was a bit of a highlight. So there you go. Thank you all for showing up. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be on Twitch this weekend, as I am sometimes. But with that said, Monday morning, 10 a.m. on Twitch. Link is below the video. Come check out the Rash Hour. That's the name of the show. Come chat. Have a good time. Until then, see you all later. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.